So I'm back at the Amiga 500 once again. Let's kind of talk through what I've done so far. Let me disconnect the system. So where I've been kind of at with this is, first off, we have the fat AGNUS chip here. And I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera. You can see the piece of wrap wire kind of leading off there. It's tack soldered to the missing pin. I then took the wire and slid it down into the socket here and then put the device in. And that seemed to get that signal connected back up. With that pin just plain missing, I always got a yellow screen. With the kludge in place, I could get past the yellow screen fairly often. I ended up getting to red screen, which I believe is a processor issue. Reseated the chips again. Had some luck with that. I've a few times gotten the system to the point where it actually accesses the floppy. So I'll see the floppy read light come on. And the system I'll try to read it. Of course, I don't have a bootable floppy for the machine. So I really don't know what should happen at that point. I'd like to get to the point where I see the screen with the, insert the boot floppy. So I spent significantly more on eBay than I should have for replacement fat AGNUS chip. Let's go ahead and open this up. We'll take a look at that chip. This chip is supposedly tested and working. Hopefully it's in some kind of anti-static protection in there. I can feel the chip up here. Though I'm not convinced how good it is. Okay, so the seller took the time to actually package it well. So it was double enveloped and they're both bubbled, so it had double bubble wrap around it. And it is in a sealed ESD bag here. It looks like it's the exact same part. It does look exactly like the same part. So where I got to, as I was talking before, was with the chip in, the system would come up and get to a yellow screen. And often if I do this, just pick the board up and give it a hard thump, it would then continue on through and attempt to, get to the white screen and access the floppy. And I spent a lot of time playing with this, and I couldn't tell if the mechanical jumping was affecting the connection here in the fat AGNUS socket. I've got a replacement socket on order. I'm just going to go ahead and replace the socket. Yesterday, while it was trying to restart and cycling to the yellow screen, I reached back here and clicked the 68,000 down, and suddenly it seemed to come up and run. But again, it wasn't stable. I spent some time yesterday and walked through the 6800. I don't know which chip is what, the ROM and the Dinesh chip, and I resoldered, just reflowed a bunch of solder joints here and added a bit of fresh solder, thinking maybe it was a mechanical issue. I also went to the power connector. I'd mentioned in an earlier video that some of the solder joints looked fatigued, and just resoldered all those, added a bit of fresh solder just in case there was a cracked solder joint and this was intermittent power. But where I get to most of the time is end up at the yellow screen, which, as I understand, is indicative of a memory issue. It could be a bad chip out here. It could be, apparently the most common is the fat AGNUS. I hope I'm saying that right. So what I thought we'd do here is go ahead and hook everything back up. That video connector is tight. I guess the other kludge to show you here is this. This is just a random cable out of my mix of cables. It's got a power, it's got a couple of the 3.5-inch floppy drive cables, which of course I can connect down here onto the motherboard and into the floppy drive, and I've tested the voltages and everything works out correct. So I'm using this to power the floppy drive. I have the 3.5-inch floppy drive out of my 1040 ST, my Atari system, which has disk change, etc. Although I'm not convinced it's exactly working as expected. I think in a previous video we looked at that external floppy, hoping to be able to use it on here, and I can't. I actually have another Amiga system coming with an internal floppy that should be able to be pulled out and tested on here. I was very careful going through the floppy cable. Maybe I'll actually demonstrate this here for you. Let me get the ohm meter fired up. Get it in continuity mode, and we'll do a couple of things here. So you can hear the continuity mode. So if I get on a ground here, one row of pins on the floppy connector are going to be ground, one side are going to be signal. And you can hear from the continuity mode that side is ground and that side appears open. If we get on the floppy drive, power connectors down here coming in, and the center two pins happen to be ground. And if I look across this back row of pins here where the 34-pin cable comes out, I can see that row of pins is also ground. So by taking the floppy drive and attaching it, making sure I'm not a pin off, and flipping the drive over, I should be able to get on a ground here on the motherboard and now see this back row of pins are all ground. And that just tells me I've got the cable on in the right orientation. You know, the floppy drive's marked, pins 1 and 2 with the red. I didn't find markings in the silk screen to tell me which side was pin 1. So that's how I verified that I had the floppy cable on the right direction. If you get the floppy cable the wrong direction, you end up grounding out all the control signals to the floppy. You ground out all the signals potentially from the controller chip, and that's just not a good situation. So you want to make sure you've got the cable on the right way. Let's go ahead and get power to the floppy drive. I do have a floppy power cable on order, pre-made one. I had some concerns about this with getting the 12 volt, the yellow, and the 5 volt, the red signals crossed, and bringing 12 volts onto the floppy drive. I've been able to verify that I haven't. We can go ahead and verify that again. Let me get the meter back on volts. Get anything that's going to potentially short the system off the system. I'm going to get a ground connection here. This is shield ground and the electronics ground. And I've got the fat AGNUS chip out, so the system will not start. But what I want to do is get on the 5 volt pin right here on that connector, and I'm just going to apply 5 volts only. And I see 5.03 volts, which is correct. So that tells me that I've brought the power through correctly. And again, before I actually applied it to the drive, I had brought the power up, and I had got in here and measured the +5 here just to make sure I wasn't going to swap. The 12 volt power supply is turned off. That's why I'm not seeing 12 volts there. So let me turn the power to the system back off, hook up the floppy drive. Actually, I'm going to leave it upside down. And I really think the next step is to get the fat AGNUS chip installed, the replacement one. Again, I'm working on an ESD surface here. It is grounded. I do have a wrist strap here, but I'm not going to go ahead and put it on since I'm making physical contact. And I'm not convinced that socket is good. Try not to touch the leads here. He's going to go in this orientation, and I'm going to end up touching the leads. bit of a hard time getting him in position. You're going to be stubborn. There is an angled notch right here, and there seems to be an angled notch right here. So the orientation should be this direction. There, it dropped down to the top. Let's go ahead and snap him down in. And my hope here is the system at this point will actually come up, you know, solidly, and always try to get through to the white screen and attempt to boot. So let me bring up all the power supply rails. The video converter is woke up and given me its splash screen. Straight to a white screen. Oh, that's excellent. I'm just going to check the floppy here to make sure I've got 12 volts. So I have the 5 volts, but I don't have 12 volts to the floppy. Do I have the 12 volts down here? I do. So I've got an issue in the cabling here. It's keeping the 12 volts coming through, but I'm really happy with that. Let me turn the power supply off. We'll turn all the supply rails back on. And the video adapter, the power for the video adapter comes off the board. It takes it a second to start, and I'm at a white screen. It's either dark gray or white. My understanding is the system won't start without a floppy connected. So let's troubleshoot why I don't have the 12 volt power coming through. It's most likely a connection issue right here. Let's see if we're at least getting up to here. So I do have the 12 volts to here. So that's curious. Let me turn the power off. Power off, there we go. And we'll check directly in the connector here. So power supply on. I'm using my Rigol DP 832. It's got a 5 volt tap. It's adjustable over a short range. It's got a 30 volt, actually two 30 volt outputs that are adjustable. One of the 5 volt and one of the 30 volt are, the grounds are common, and then the third 30 volt is floating, and I'm using that floating 30 volt to produce a negative 12. So I'm current limited on all the supplies. So you know, it's a pretty solid way, I think, to bring the system up. I should see 5 volts here. I do see 12 volts there. So I know the 12 volts is getting to the connector. All the power rails are off. Do not be tempted to swap these kind of cables live. All the power supplies back on. I've got the 5 volts. There's the 12 volts. So it's not attempting to access the floppy. Yesterday I could get the floppy light to come on. Go ahead and insert. Oh. I actually felt the head step. So I can feel the motor spinning. Happy with that. Let's turn the power supplies off, and I'm going to open up the drive and see if I can manually step the heads away from track 0. And see if the controller actually steps them back. Oops, that didn't help. Need you unclipped. And I need you unclipped. Doggone it. Oh, now the other side's clipped back in. You can probably see the piece of electrical tape there. See if I can get that to peel off. And I can't. So getting this drive to work, I managed to break off a couple of the clips that kind of hold the face on here. I mean, it sits on there, but the face comes loose and falls off, so the clips really aren't broke as much as they're loose. And so that piece of tape was just to hold the plastic front panel on. So let's see if we can step the heads. Maybe I can't, although what I should be able to do maybe is it's got a little bar there that rides in the worm screw, and maybe I can lift that up enough to just move the head forward. Yeah. So I'm stepping the head out quite a ways out. So I've stepped the heads out towards the most inner track. Hopefully we're going to see the head step back. That'd be a really good sign. Although again, this floppy drive may not be compatible. Power is on. Oh, we got the yellow screen this time, so we're back to that. Oh, that doesn't make me happy. This looked so promising a minute ago. And it's just cycling on the yellow screen here. See what it does here, if anything. Cycling on the yellow screen. Oh, I was so excited there when it was just straight to the white screen. Again, this issue seems to be mechanical. All of them off. All this plies on. And yellow screen again. So something's just a little bit intermittent here, and it seems like it's potentially mechanical, although right now I can't get the system to come up. So close. Cycling the power again. Well, shoot. Man, and we're back to this. So it's possible I've got a bad IC. The socket for the 68000, you just heard it creak like mad there. I'm not convinced that socket's a good socket. It's possible I've got an issue with one of the DRAMs down here, or the driver chips, or the data path ICs here. Trying to decide where I want to go next. I mean, I'm definitely going to replace this socket now. Somebody's had a go at it. It really looks to me like the socket slightly bowed along this edge here. It doesn't, I can feel it as if I got something that's flush. I can line up against there just to see if that is rocked out. Let me turn the power supplies off. Looking for my little ruler. Nothing is ever within an easy grasp. Oh, there it is. A little steel rule. I'm just gonna put that up against this edge of the socket. There's a little bit of a bow there. There seems to be a bit of a bow there too. Hard to say. We definitely know somebody took a shot at this due to the broken pin on this guy here. I'm going to attempt to get him in the little ESD bag as a not very reliable replacement, but I will hold on to him. You know, this could be a timing issue where one of the DRAMs is problematic. It could be a bit of a thermal issue where that little bit of runtime heated something up and caused a chip that's just on the hairy edge to become flaky. I don't have any freeze mist here. See what happens if I bring power back. Straight to the yellow screen. Oh, I was so encouraged. Really, once I get into this where it's yellow screen, I got a solid yellow screen at the moment, and then it does a bunch of broken video, and then comes back to the solid yellow screen. So it's definitely telling me it's unhappy with memory. I'm going to actually try a couple of things. Don't necessarily recommend you do this yourself, but I'm going to apply a bit of tension on the sides of the flat AGNUS socket just to see if I can identify a bad connection. It actually acted different. Solid yellow. There's the... No, that didn't really help. Kind of don't expect this to. I'm not applying a ton of pressure here. I'm not convinced it's a mechanical connection issue in the socket, though it could well be. I could take the time to continue to resolder everything down around here, or I could just take the time and actually lift the devices out, put sockets in. It really does look bowed to me. And it feels bowed, even though the little straight edge didn't rock very much. And there's Rosie again, just poor little girl. There's a little bit of rocking in that. It doesn't just push up flush and just sit solidly on there. Trying to see if this is bowed out. I'm twisting the board slightly. I'm trying to get a sense here if there's a mechanical connection issue someplace. No, this is pretty consistent this time. I can't get past this, which maybe is moving more towards a electronics issue. Boy, I was so excited there when I first put the fat AGNUS chip in and the system came up. Thought, we've solved that. You know, I could take a little bit of time and look at the data outs and data ins on these devices. You know, it appears to me we're getting far enough that the CPU is attempting to run. I'm not exactly sure how this memory test is written, or whether it's completely run out of ROM. You know, I don't know if it requires memory or not to run. You could certainly do, I believe, an entire memory test simply out of ROM. I don't think the 68,000 would necessarily need RAM, although I could be wrong. I haven't looked at the code. Well, shoot. Wish it was better news. So I will wrap this segment up here, and I'll be back when I have more news.